this lesson, we're going to talk about distance. Distance is the length of the segment between the points. So our distance formula is going to be the square root of x2 minus x1 squared plus parenthesis y2 minus y1 and all that squared. So we will be using that distance formula here in just a little bit, but looking at a number line, if we were going to find from B to D, we would see that we have 2. You can find that by just subtracting the two numbers and doing the absolute value. And that gives you -2, which ultimately absolute value would give you 2. So A to M, I know we can just count, but if it's something like -4 and 8, again, you can subtract and do the absolute value. So that would give you 12. From E to K, 0 to 6. Go ahead and try those next two on your own. And from C to K, 8. Next up is our congruent symbol. Remember that that means that it's the same length or shape when we use congruence. So if we look at BG is that, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, going to be the same length as DK, which is going to be 7. So that would be false. They're not congruent. They're not the same length, so they are not the same shape or size. And then I want you to check the next one on your own. Hopefully you got true for that one, that those are going to be congruent. Next up, we're going to use our distance formula. So we can use our distance formula, or when it's in the graph, we can go ahead and use what I call, it's basically the distance formula, but it's Pythagorean theorem, which is kind of the same thing. Square root of our leg squared plus our leg squared. And our legs are just these lengths right here. So we're going to go ahead and count. So if we're at -5 and we get to 3, that would be 8. And if we go up here from 9 down here to -5, that's going to be a leg length of 14. So we are going to go ahead and take our 14 and square it, and our 8 and square it, and then we are going to add those together. So 14 times 14, or 14 squared, is 196. 8 times 8, or 8 squared, is 64. And when we add those together, we get 260. And we can do the square root of it. Or you can leave it. It sometimes depends on what it's asking, or if it's multiple choice, it might have you just leave it as an exact answer versus an approximate. All right, so next we're going to try it using our formula that we talked about up here, our distance formula. So I'm going to go ahead and write it just so I have it here as I'm working. So where do these x's and y's come from? Well, we know that an ordered pair has an x and a y. X comes before y in the alphabet. This is my first ordered pair, so I see those first. And then this is also x and y, and these are my second numbers, my second ordered pair. So now I'm just going to go ahead and plug in my x2, which is negative 6 minus, so that's a part of the formula there, and then x sub 1, negative 1. So notice I have a minus and a negative. That's going to change into a positive, plus, and then we have that squared, and then we have our parentheses, y sub 2 minus y sub 1, again, minus and a negative, because there's a minus up here in our form, and then that's squared. So now we just subtract. And then we're going to square. When we square numbers, they become positive. Negative times a negative is a positive. So that ends up getting me 61, square root of 61, and we can just leave it as square root of 61 unless it asks for you to be exact, to be approximate. All right, so I want you to try this one on your own with our leg. So these are the same thing. This formula here, or you can graph it and use leg squared. It's both finding distance. So I want you to try this one. I want you to count the legs, and do your leg squared. And hopefully you got 6 and 8 for your legs, which ultimately is going to add up to 100, which the square root of 100, it's a perfect square, is 10. So if it is a perfect square, 1, 4, 9, 16, 25, 36, if you can simplify those, you want to try and do that. If you have 2 points and you're like, I really don't want to use the distance formula, I want to graph it, I have graphs up at the front on your little yellow paper. So you could just grab a graph and graph those 2 points and then do your leg squared. So if you were to go 4 and then 9, which we can't on this one, but I'm going to do one more just in case you want to try distance formula. So x1, y1, x2, y2. And I want you to go ahead and plug it in. Sometimes it helps to just write the form out kind of like this and then plug everything into the right spots. So here it is up here. And then I want you to plug things into the right spots if you want to try this way. So 9 plus 64 is 73, square root of 73.